So this video segment is a little different than some of the others because it really seeks to explore a little bit about what really is the goalkeeper position and really some key points to make. And I think some are probably pretty obvious and maybe others a little less so. And again, just my opinion from a couple of decades of experience in youth soccer, coaching a lot of teams and kids at different ages, and what I've observed. The thing is, it's just really not at all like the field game. It really is its own game. And yes, the goalkeepers are part of the soccer team, and there are some skills that they share in common in terms of interacting with the players, particularly the players on defense. But in many other respects, the game that they play, and when you look at it from their perspective, as we do in another video, it really is its own game. And it's very typical for coaches to say that the goalkeepers need good foot-to-ball skills, and that's true. But also, my point of view is that the goalkeepers don't use these skills in any near as complex a fashion as the field players. Rather, mainly it's handling passbacks, clearing the ball, goal kicks, and punts. And of course, punts are pretty specialized. So the one thing that we really don't want goalkeepers doing is getting into one-on-one battles near the goal where you're really using those fancy soccer skills and moves and step overs and all that kind of stuff. So it certainly doesn't hurt if the goalkeepers can have skills at that level, but my opinion is that they don't need them quite to that degree. But they do need other skills for the position to a very high degree. If you think about what goalkeeping is, to me it really seems like a first-person shooter game. That might be the best analogy. So if we look at the game from the goalkeeper's perspective and think about if you had a GoPro on the goalkeeper's forehead and what it looks like to him or her, the balls are being shot at you as the goalkeeper, let's say by the bad guys who are the attackers, and the goalkeeper neutralizes them by catching and clearing the ball. That's really like, killing the attackers in a first-person shooter game. So to me, there seems to be a good analogy there, and that's just very, very different from what the field game is. But there's also less overall action to hold the attention of the younger players, so you just don't get as many shots as you might be in one of those first-person shooter video games. So that's also a challenge for the young keepers to keep their attention up. But certainly when they do get attacked, they have to be able to react to it and use the right skills for the right kinds of situations that are happening. There's many different types of attacks. Low shots and high shots with and without defenders that might be in the play and that the goalkeepers have to learn how to address. These really are the goalkeepers' helpers also, their teammates against an attack. There's free kicks, corner kicks, penalty kicks, other kinds of things that the goalkeeper has to deal with. The complexity of the position is really very high if you think about all the different things that the kids have to deal with versus a field player. But the amount of action, again, or the actual shots, can be fairly limited too. So again, keeping the focus on the game, particularly for younger kids, is always a challenge. So continuing to take a look here in terms of what really is the goalkeeper position. The goalkeeper has to be able to read the plays and the attacks from his or her perspective. And this certainly gets more complicated as more players get near the goal, both attackers and defenders. So even though a breakaway is very challenging for a keeper to defend one-on-one, it's a relatively simpler attack because you know where the ball is likely to come from. Or if the player just gets open and takes a longer high shot, the goalkeeper, has a pretty good sense of how to defend that. When you have a couple, three attackers and the ball is getting passed and a couple of defenders get in the mix, it gets to be far more complicated for the keeper to discern exactly what he or she should do, where the shot may come from. So playing the space, as we talked about in other videos, is very important. But it's really, really difficult. And it's just a far more complex situation than kids who play on the field and they receive the pass for somebody. They look for a couple of options of do they dribble or do they pass to somebody next? Where do they go in terms of running off the ball? But the number of decisions and the space on the field they're looking at is relatively more limited. The goalkeeper space can certainly be a lot more challenging and confusing. So the goalkeeper also sees the play in a way that just most coaches don't. The coaches typically, are coaching and looking at the game and the keeper, not from behind the keeper as we showed in that other video, but this sideways view, if you will, looks very different. And it doesn't show what the keeper actually sees. And again, we show this in another video. And this doesn't mean that coaches have never stood behind goalkeepers in a practice and kind of watched what they see, but during the course of the game, the coach may think that the keeper should have made a save, that they should have seen the ball, and there's no way exactly of knowing whether the keeper could have seen it or not, particularly if there's a few different players that got packed into the goal space. So that's also a challenge for the young keepers, is that the coaches may not always be in the best position to help them because the keepers just simply see the game from a very different perspective. And so one of the points of view that I have about this is that the keeper needs to be almost as good as the coach, and maybe even better, at reading the play from his or her perspective, playing in the goal, whereas the coach would be reading the play, looking at it from the side. So there's just a lot of complexity to this position, and it begs the question, should then serious goalkeepers specialize earlier? And the conventional wisdom is that kids should not specialize in goal until older ages, should not be doing it at 9 or 10 or maybe even 11 years old. On the other hand, if kids at that age really, really feel this is something they want to do, and they really, really love doing it, then because of the complexity and all of the things that you have to learn to play this position, the answer to that, should they specialize, could well be a maybe. And just an example of that is, let's say a goalkeeper only plays half a game. The half that they play may not have any shots or may only have a couple of shots, and then somebody else plays in the other half and they get 10 or 15 shots, and many of those are good ones that would be challenging. That happens for 2 or 3 games in a row. The kid who really, really wants to play goal may not be able to get all of the good shots that they should get simply to develop. So it begs the question that if it's something they really want to do, playing the whole game may make sense. So there's a lot of people that would come down on either side of that debate, but it certainly is worth raising the question and looking at it from a point of view of it is a very, very different and complicated position. Doesn't really have too much relationship to the field play, so specializing in it may not necessarily be the wrong thing to do.